Let's be honest, guys. Watching Grandmaster games can be really difficult because some of the moves that players make are just so good that we just don't understand them. Today, everybody, I'm going to be showing you a super Grandmaster game from start to finish, and I'm going to explain to you every single move so that you can follow the thought process of a super GM. Now, the game was played in round number 3 of Tata Steel, a huge chess tournament happening right now in Netherlands with some of the top chess players in the world. And this was the only decisive game from today. I mean, all the other games became a draw, so I wanted to show you the most exciting one of them all. The game was played between American Grandmaster Fabiano Caruana and Jorden Van Foreest, the Grandmaster from Netherlands. The game went e4, e5, knight f3, knight f6, and here we have a Petrov. Now, the Petrov is known to be drawish and boring, but this game shows you that the Petrov is none of that, or at least, well, not always. Now, Fabiano Caruana, he plays the Petrov quite a lot himself, so he's very knowledgeable in this opening. Knight takes e5, this is the main move. In the Petrov, what typically happens is that these two pawns disappear, and, well, ultimately, I mean, white typically it's a little bit of initiative, but, I mean, there's still a lot of play in the game. So here, everybody, if you do play this, do not take on e4. This leads to you at least losing a pawn, but if you're not careful, you might also lose a queen. So for all of you that want to play this, that may, you know, not be super high rated, don't do this. Don't do this because after knight takes e5, this can become really bad after queen e2. If you're not careful, if you go something like knight f6, then there is knight c6, and all of a sudden, boom, you're losing a queen. I'll not get into this like too in depth, but I just wanted to give you that very, you know, little tip of don't take this pawn. It can become dangerous. So d6 is the main move here, threatening the knight, forcing the knight to go back, and then you capture the pawn on e4 because now the e file is not blocked anymore. So d4, this is one of the main moves. You can also here go knight c3. This has become very popular lately, but d4 is one of the most classical lines. d4, you get some space in the center. Center is great. And black goes d5 because he wants to get this bishop out. The bishop is a little bit blocked if this pawn is here, so we want to get this bishop out. And now bishop d3, simply threatening the knight, developing the bishop. Bishop e6, castles, and now f5. Now, in this position, I mean, f5, the idea of going here is that you basically want to defend this knight. You want to make sure that if white ever takes her, that you can maybe capture back with this pawn if you want to. So that is the idea of that. You're just reinforcing that knight a little bit more. So queen e2, just getting the queen out of the way. Bishop e7, knight e5. This is the greatest square for the knight. I mean, you want to have the knight in the center. And now knight d7. Black is developing. So now in this position, white could go, for instance, something like bishop f4, simply to defend the knight and then capture with the bishop. But white said, you know what? I don't want to decide where I'm going to go with the bishop. Maybe later on I want to go f4 with my pawn. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to capture on d7. Now, what is the idea of that? Well, simply that you're saying, hey, I don't want you to be able to take here on e5. I don't want to take back with the pawn. So I'll just do this, and now it'll be my turn again. And now white played this move f3. Now, f3 is threatening this knight. And typically, when you threaten a piece, that piece moves. But in this position, the piece did not move. Instead, castles happened. Now, when I saw this game, I was like, how? How is castles happening? How can white just not capture the knight? Well, everybody, let me explain to you why. That's why I'm here. But yeah, at first I was like really confused. But basically the reason is that if you go f takes e4, the thing here is that white's pieces are just so undeveloped. Like these three pieces are doing absolutely nothing right now. In black's pieces, if you're looking carefully, black has developed the bishop, black has castled, black has a lot of pieces in the game right now. So black is definitely ahead in development. So in this position, f takes e4, and after an exchange of rooks, bishop b5, this is the only square if you want to save the bishop, only square. there is c6, forcing the bishop to go back. And now just look at this. 1, 2, 3, 4 pieces are doing nothing, whereas these 4 pieces are doing a lot. Black is better here because of that, because black just has more active pieces than white. And sometimes that is all that matters in chess. So bishop g4 here, to just give you a little bit more of a specific variation, threatening the queen. The queen has to move. Bishop d6, looking towards the king. Now bishop e3 to develop. Queen c7 threatening this pawn, and if you go g3, rook f3, and guys, look at all the threats. This is terrible. The king is just not doing good. I mean, this king on g1 is just not... Guys, this is going to be happening. There's going to be sacrifices everywhere, and this king might get checkmated. I mean, it's just a terrible position for white. So white actually does not want to capture the knight after castles. Instead, white wants to go bishop f4. Now, white decided to develop the bishop, and the bishop is most active here. It doesn't make sense to go anywhere else with the bishop. So, bishop f6, threatening this pawn on d4, and now defending it. Now, after this, g5 was played, and typically, you know, you want to make sure that, for us that are not super GMs, we typically say that you shouldn't push your pawns in front of the king. But when you are a super grandmaster, which, by the way, for everyone that's wondering, that is if you're like over 2,700, when you are a super grandmaster, rules in chess just don't apply. Like, you basically make your own rules, I feel like, because you're just too good at chess. Like, you're just so good, you can just, you know, don't care about the rules. And yeah, g5 here, it makes sense because actually this king is not so unsafe because of the fact that there's so many pieces that are around the king. So the king can always go to h8, and after something like queen g7, rook g8, this king is going to be like pretty packed up. Like, the king is going to be doing good. So it's actually not so scary for the king. So this is actually totally fine to get space on the king side. And yeah, this is a good move. And also, one of black's ideas now is going to be to start attacking white's king. So sometimes you might choose to go f4 or to go g4, even to start pushing over here. Whereas probably in this position, white is going to play more in the center and on the queen side, more than on the king side. So it's going to be a very, you know, king versus queen side sort of game, which is very common in chess games. You know, if someone is attacking on one side, you got to attack on the other. So bishop e5, and now finally, white is actually threatening to capture this knight. So if black would do something random, white could actually capture this knight. So knight d6 was played here. And now, one of the ideas is to go f4, knight f5, and then place a fantastic knight on e3. This would be a great outpost for the knight. So what did white do? Well, white said, hey, if you want to go f4, I'm not going to let you go f4 because chess is about being annoying. And chess is about stopping your opponent's plans. So white played f4 to stop black from going here. Now in this position, this actually became pretty crucial because the move right now is going to decide what is going to happen in the next, like, it's going to decide not the outcome of the game, but like the outcome of this position. Because black now has two plans. Either black decides to capture on f4 and open up the g file and start playing, just start playing with the pieces, king h8, queen g7, rook g8, or black goes g4 and says, I'm going to go h5, h4, and I'm going to start, you know, creating this sort of attack. So there's two very different ideas right now. So another idea here, apart from going g5 or capturing on f4, would be to capture on e5. So this would probably actually have been the best move in this position with a similar idea, I mean, of capturing on f4. I mean, capturing on f4 is like not great right now, but just like whenever you go g4, you cannot capture here anymore. That is what I'm trying to say. So going g4 right now, which is the move that happened in the game, is like a really big decision because you're never going to be able to do this. But actually, the best move in this position would probably have been to capture this bishop because now white pretty much wants to take with the f pawn. I mean, if you take with the d pawn, then black is going to go c5 and get a lot of center. If you take with the queen, it just doesn't make sense after rook comes in. So f takes e5, and now actually after something like knight e4, black is going to be able to go f4, and black is just going to get a really good position at some point. Maybe not now, but at some point black might go f4, and the knight is just going to be really well placed here, and there's going to be all these ideas of king g7, king h8, bring the queen in, etc. So this would just have been perhaps a better option, but black went g4 over here. Now, knight a3 was played here, rook e8, and then knight c2. We can see that white went knight a3, which kind of looks like a strange move because the idea was to go knight c2 and then knight e3. And the idea is to place the knight on like ultimately the best square. I think that a lot of times we just like move the knight out to a square that kind of looks good because it feels natural to go there. But we don't think about what is the ultimately best square for our piece. And here for this knight is aimed to be on e3. It's not aimed to stay here. It's aimed to be here in an active square where it's threatening a lot of different pawns and where it has a lot more mobility. Guys, I'm trying to use new words in my chess videos. I'm trying to use new words. So, black played bishop d8. What is the idea of this? Well, the idea is, actually this feels a little bit like a slow move, but the idea of this is that black is now saying, I'm going to play on the queen side and I want this bishop to be able to get to this diagonal, basically. I don't want to have this bishop stuck here, and I also don't want all the time for white to be able to capture and then, you know, rook captures and, I don't know, maybe bring the queen in or whatever. Just simply the fact that the rook is forced here to stay in the defense of the bishop might be a bit annoying. So, rook d1, getting the rooks into the center, now c6, knight e3, b5, and now that black has gotten all this space, white is saying, okay, I need to stop you a little bit, because if black goes a5, I mean b4, I'm not even sure if that is exactly what they want to do, but I mean, black is trying to get space right now, so white's simply saying, I want to stop you from getting all of that, so I'm going to go a4, and I'm going to sacrifice a pawn, but it's not really a sacrifice because white will always be able to get this pawn back. So captures, queen c2, now the queen is going to be able to take this pawn. It's really hard to defend it, and now black went h5. So black is just trying to push on the king side. This has to be the plan now. I mean, black doesn't have that much play on the queen side anymore. So black is going to start playing here on the king side. King h1, the king didn't want to stay on this file. Was this maybe a little bit of a slow move? Maybe, but it's also saying, hey, like, what is black going to do? What are you going to do right now? So now black decided that if this pawn is going to be falling anyways, why not just give it away in a better way? So why not go a3? The idea of going a3 is that if when white captures now, white pretty much, I mean, has to capture, or maybe white can go b4 and then try to capture with the piece, but white ended up capturing. But when white captures, the idea is that now this square is going to be free. There's never going to be any b3, and also, I mean, this pawn chain is not going to be as good anymore, and this pawn might become a little bit of a weakness, and most importantly, the a file will not be open for white, which will mean that this pawn will not become a weakness later on. So those are the main ideas of going a3. Now black went for this really nice move, knight c4, and the idea of going knight c4 is basically that white has to capture it. I mean, if you don't capture it, this knight is a monster. This knight is going to be so good. So white has to capture but after black captures, actually, you may say, Anna, this looks like a terrible pawn structure. And you're right. The pawn structure is terrible. It's absolutely devastating. But what is the good thing? That this square is open now for the bishop. This diagonal is going to be fantastic for the bishop. So black is going to have the possibility of going bishop d5, and it's just going to be actually fantastic, because after bishop d5, this bishop is going to be so strong, and if white has to exchange this knight for the bishop, pawn takes, actually black's pawn structure is going to be really good. And white will be slightly better because this bishop is better than this one, but it will not be so clear how white wins this. It's not going to be, because right now, I mean, yeah, white does have an advantage simply because of the fact that white's pieces are so much better than black's pieces. This knight and this bishop are just so much better than these two bishops. So, king g1 was played, and now it was crucial for black to go bishop d5. He didn't do it though. He didn't go bishop d5, but this would have been a really good continuation, and this would have given black a lot of chances in this position. Instead, black played h4. Now, I'm not sure if Jorden knew that this was a blunder. I'm not really sure, or maybe this was a planned blunder, because this move actually gives up a pawn. So the reason why h4 is not so good is because it gives up this g4 pawn. Knight takes g4 becomes a move. But like I said, maybe Jorden saw this and thought that this was a good trade-off because now this bishop is going to get active. But let me show you what happens. So knight takes g4. Black cannot capture because there's queen g6 checkmate. I mean, queen g7 and then boom, checkmate. So black cannot capture. So in this position, black ended up going bishop d5. And truth is that this bishop does get really active is now the knight, when it comes back, it gives the chance for black to go bishop e4. As previously, when with the bishop on d5, the knight could capture it. Now black has this possibility. But the thing is that even though this bishop is really strong, the issue here is that the pawn on c4 is hanging. The pawns are just so weak. It's going to be really hard to defend them. Pretty much the only way that black can defend them is by going bishop d3, which looks like you're getting an exchange. And truth is, black is getting an exchange, but at what cost is the question. And the cost is that black just has terrible pieces. Right now, white has a knight for a rook, but also 2 pawns. So a knight and 2 pawns for a rook. So white right now, I mean, if you just count points, I mean, it's 5. A knight is worth 3, and then 2 pawns, it's, 1 point each, so 5, and a rook is worth 5. So it's equal in material in that sense, but black's pieces are so bad. This knight and the bishop are just so fantastic. Like, what is this bishop doing? The bishop is not doing much. And it's going to be really hard for black to get any attack on white's king because this bishop is just dominating the position. Black cannot go queen g7. I mean, black cannot even go king h8 and rook g8. It's going to be really hard. And this pawn is a weakness. White is going to get this fantastic b file. And I mean, what does black do? This is just a really bad position for black. So black went rook e6 here. And now rook b1, rook g6, trying to reroute the rook to create some attack, maybe with h3, which is, what black has to do. And now rook b8 was played. Queen f7, now there was the possibility of going knight takes f5, because after an exchange, the bishop would be hanging. But instead, c4 was playing, and now white is dominating the position. White is planning on going d5 and just starting pushing this pawn. So c5 was played, and white captured the pawn. Bishop e7, threatening to capture back the pawn with the bishop. And if black would be able to do so, that would be good because then the bishop would get really active. But rook b7, pinning the bishop. And after queen e6, rook c7, defending the pawn. Rook c8, exchanging. And now queen d5. Look at the queen. It's just so good. It's in the best square possible. This is literally the best square in the whole position. It's fantastic. The queen is just so good here. King f8. Bishop d6, white just wants to exchange everything because the endgame, the knight versus rook endgame, is just completely winning because white just has the 2 extra pawns, well, 3 extra pawns right now. But not only that, I mean, the pawn is also passed pawn. It's just terrible. So queen e6, and now after an exchange of pieces, we got this endgame with the rook versus the knight and the pawns. And now after c5, black resigned. Fabiano Caruana won this here. Now, to be honest, if this was a blitz game, I would have just like captured the pawns and pushed. But at this level, I mean, you don't do it because this is just super lost. I mean, even after like rook takes g2, you can even capture this pawn, but you can also just go c6 and it's just gonna be there's no way of stopping the promotion. There's going to be a promotion. There's no way of stopping it. So guys, this was the decisive game of round number 3 of Tata Steel. The standings right now are looking like this. So, so you know how the tournament is going. I hope that you guys enjoyed the recap. I hope you enjoyed the analysis of the game. Hopefully, this made you understand a little bit more some super GM moves. I will see you all in the next video. Have a wonderful day. Thank you guys so much for watching. Bye-bye.